We're going to see a river.
Deuce. Stewie wins the tournament.
Poker isn't just about winning huge pots. It's about staying on top.
What's up with this, man? Play this table and wait forever?
But for these 7 poker legends, that was easier said than done. They once had it all: millions of dollars, championship titles, and the respect of the poker world. But through a mix of bad luck, wild spending, and brutal decisions, they went from ballin' to broke. Let's dive into the dramatic downfalls of these 7 poker superstars and find out how they went from living large to busting out. Jamie Gold, the one-hit wonder. Jamie Gold burst onto the poker scene in 2006 with one of the most electrifying performances in WSOP history. With a mix of aggressive play, bold table talk, and lucky breaks, Gold outlasted 8,772 players to win the WSOP main event in a staggering $12 million, the largest prize ever awarded in poker at the time. But as fast as Gold rose to poker fame, his fortune started to unravel. It wasn't long after Gold's victory that legal troubles began to haunt him. A lawsuit from his former business partner, Crispin Laser, claimed that Gold owed him half of the $12 million due to a deal they made to split any winnings. The case settled out of court, and Gold had to part with a large chunk of his prize. On top of the lawsuit, Gold's poker career fizzled out just as quickly as it had begun. He never replicated his WSOP success and fell out of the limelight, becoming known more for his one-time victory than his poker skills. Reports surfaced that Gold had blown through much of his winnings through bad investments and reckless spending. Today, Gold makes appearances on live streams from time to time and does charity work, but his days as a poker superstar are long behind him. Eric Lindgren, from full tilt glory to full-on debt. Eric E-Dog Lindgren's rise to poker fame was meteoric. He started off as a young, brash player with a flair for aggression and quickly became a household name in the poker world. By the mid-2000s, Lindgren was winning major tournaments left and right, including a coveted World Poker Tour title and 2 WSOP bracelets. At his peak, he was raking in millions, earning the respect of his peers, and living a lifestyle most could only dream of. He was also one of the original full-tilt poker pros, which not only gave him a lucrative sponsorship, but also put him at the forefront of televised poker, making him a poker celebrity. Lindgren's natural charisma and skill at the table earned him a spot among the poker elite, and he seemed to have it all: fame, fortune, and success. But behind the glitz and glamour, Lindgren's personal demons were festering. His addiction to sports betting was eating away at his fortune, even as he continued to win at the tables. He would place huge bets, often chasing losses and borrowing money from fellow poker players to cover his ever-mounting debts. It didn't take long before Lindgren's financial troubles started to catch up with him. The collapse of Full Tilt Poker in 2011 due to the Black Friday scandal was a major blow. Like many of the pros associated with the site, Lindgren had millions tied up in the company, and when it folded, a huge part of his fortune disappeared overnight. The real bombshell came in 2012 when Lindgren filed for bankruptcy, revealing the extent of his financial woes. With over $10 million in debt, including massive amounts owed to fellow poker players and creditors, Lindgren's fall from grace was complete. His story served as one of the biggest cautionary tales in poker, a reminder that no matter how high you rise, unchecked addiction and reckless spending can bring even the brightest stars crashing down. Despite attempts at rehab and efforts to reclaim his career, Lindgren's name is now synonymous with one of the most dramatic falls in poker history. Kai Noreen, the rise and fall of a high-stakes mystery. Kai Noreen was a quiet storm in the poker world, known to insiders, but not a household name. This mysterious player made his fortune in high-stakes cash games, particularly in underground poker circuits. But what made Noreen's story truly captivating wasn't just his rise, but how swiftly he fell from grace, almost disappearing overnight. Noreen made a name for himself in the back rooms of private games, where the stakes were astronomical and the competition was cutthroat. He had a knack for taking calculated risks and walking away from some of the biggest underground games with serious cash. But unlike others who invested and saved, Noreen had a taste for the high life: extravagant cars, luxury travel, and wild nights out. His downfall came when he began to mix business with pleasure. taking bigger and riskier bets. Not only in poker, but in ventures outside the game. Several bad investments, coupled with the increasing competition in the high-stakes world, left Noreen scrambling to recover. He tried to play his way back to the top, but his bankroll was shrinking fast, and his once steady earnings couldn't keep up with his spending. Today, Kai Noreen's name has faded into the background of the poker world, a tragic reminder that even those who rise in the shadows can fall into them just as fast. Gus Hansen. From the Great Dane to great losses. If there's one poker player who lived life as fast as he played poker, it's Gus Hansen. Known as the Great Dane, Hansen was one of the original faces of televised poker, famous for his hyper-aggressive, fearless style. A high-stakes tournament beast, he amassed multiple WPT titles and nearly $11 million in tournament winnings. But Gus Hansen didn't just play poker, he lived it. And sometimes he lived it a little too recklessly. He was the epitome of a poker rock star, traveling the world, playing in the biggest games, and embracing the adrenaline-fueled lifestyle that came with it. Hansen's rise was meteoric. He burst onto the poker scene in the early 2000s with an unconventional style that kept his opponents guessing and fans memorized. His relentless aggression and willingness to push the envelope made him one of the most dangerous players on the felt. He wasn't afraid to shove his chips in with nothing, knowing he could outplay his opponents in key spots. His run of success in tournaments solidified his status as one of the greats, with millions in winnings and a reputation as one of the toughest competitors in the game. But while Hansen was making headlines in tournaments, he was also grinding in the high-stakes cash games, and that's where things started to unravel. Hansen's downfall didn't happen in one massive blow. It was a slow burn over years of high-stakes losses. He became notorious for his wild swings in cash games, particularly online. His aggressive style, which had brought him fame and fortune in tournaments, became his undoing in the high-stakes online poker scene, where variance can be brutal and bankroll management is critical. Hansen's no-fear approach led to massive losses, especially in the nosebleed games of full-tilt poker. When the site went down during the Black Friday scandal and high-stakes online games disappeared, Gus had already lost millions. Despite continuing to play, taking shots at both live and online games, the losses kept piling up. His ultra-aggressive style, once his greatest asset, had turned into a curse. He began to lose more frequently, unable to adjust to this changing landscape of high-stakes poker. By 2015, reports emerged that Hansen had lost over $20 million playing online poker, making him one of the biggest losers in the history of the game. His fall from the top was both shocking and sobering, showing just how dangerous the high-stakes world can be, even for poker's most fearless players. Today, Gus Hansen has struggled to return to the top, and his days as a dominant force in the game seem far behind him. While he occasionally makes appearances in live games, he's no longer the high-flying poker star who once ruled the felt. Hansen's story served as a stark reminder that in poker, as in life, no matter how high you rise, the fall can be swift and unforgiving. Scotty Nguyen, the prince of poker's wild ride. Scotty Nguyen was once the face of poker's golden age. Crowned the Prince of Poker, Nguyen was a larger-than-life character known for his flashy personality, epic trash talk, and undeniable poker skills. After winning the 1998 WSOP main event and raking in millions in tournaments, Nguyen was living the dream. But that dream came with a dark side: alcohol and gambling addiction. Nguyen's fall from grace began slowly as his personal demons started affecting his game. His legendary victory at the 2008 WSOP $50,000 Horse Championship was overshadowed by his drunken antics at the table. Fans saw a man who was struggling, and his behavior tarnished his reputation in the poker community. Despite his massive success, Nguyen's bad habits took a heavy toll on his finances. He blew through millions in poker winnings, fueled by reckless spending and his drinking problem. By the time the poker boom slowed, Nguyen found himself in a financial and personal rut. unable to reclaim the throne he once sat upon. While Nguyen had worked to rebuild his career and personal life, his story is a cautionary tale about how fame, fortune, and addiction can collide in devastating ways. Stu Ungar, poker's tragic genius. Stu Ungar was a poker prodigy, widely regarded as one of the greatest players to ever touch a deck of cards. A three-time WSOP main event champion, Ungar's genius at the poker table was unmatched. His ability to read players and calculate odds made him nearly unbeatable in both poker and gin rummy, but his unparalleled skills couldn't save him from himself. Ungar's tragic downfall was rooted in his addiction to drugs, particularly cocaine. Even at the height of his poker dominance, Ungar's drug habit was spiraling out of control. He would win millions in poker tournaments, only to blow it all on drugs and reckless gambling. Despite multiple attempts to get clean, Ungar's addiction always pulled him back down. By the time he won his third WSOP main event in 1997, Ungar was a shadow of his former self. His victory was bittersweet as he spent much of his prize money on drugs and ended up broke again. A year later, in 1998, Stu Ungar was found dead in a cheap Las Vegas hotel room, penniless and alone. A tragic reminder that even the greatest talents can be destroyed by their demons. Gavin Griffin, poker's youngest star, burns out. Gavin Griffin's rise in poker was nothing short of meteoric. In 2004, he became the youngest player to ever win a WSOP bracelet at just 22 years old. He followed that up with victories at the EPT and WPT, making him the first player to win titles in all three major poker tours. Gavin seemed destined for greatness, raking in millions and becoming one of the brightest stars in poker. But the pressure of success, combined with a downturn in his results, led to Griffin's downfall. As the wins dried up, so did his bankroll. Griffin admitted to struggling with overspending, especially during the poker boom, when the money seemed endless. He bought houses, cars, and lived the high life, but when the poker economy slowed, he found himself with more expenses than income. By the early 2010s, Griffin had lost most of his fortune and faded from the spotlight. He worked to rebuild his life, but his story is a classic example of how poker's highs can quickly turn into devastating lows. Brad Booth, Yukon, Brad's high-stakes crash. Brad Yukon Booth was a high-stakes legend during the poker boom of the mid-2000s. Known for his wild aggression and fearlessness, Booth was a regular in the biggest games in Las Vegas, famously sitting down with $1 million in cash to face off against Phil Ivey on high-stakes poker. But while Booth's poker career looked unstoppable, his reckless style and even more reckless spending habits eventually led to disaster. Booth's downfall began when the poker boom started slowing down. His hyper-aggressive strategy, which made him a star, began to cost him millions. Booth was playing in some of the highest stakes games in the world, and while he had the talent, the variance caught up with him. On top of that, Booth admitted to being involved in some shady business ventures outside of poker that drained his bankroll. But the nail in the coffin came with the infamous Ultimate Bet online poker scandal, where Booth lost millions due to the cheating that occurred on the site. Unable to recover from the online losses and his deteriorating bankroll, Booth eventually went broke. In 2012, Booth made headlines when he revealed that he was living out of his car, a stark contrast to the high-rolling life he once led. Booth's story is one of poker's most heartbreaking downfalls. A player with all the skills, but none of the breaks. Ted Forrest, the ultimate grinder turned debtor. Ted Forrest is a poker legend, one of the most respected and feared players in the game, known for his prowess in both cash games and tournaments. With 6 WSOP bracelets to his name, Forrest was a grinder who worked his way to millions. But despite his immense talent, Forrest's financial struggles became one of the more shocking tales in the poker world. Forrest's troubles came to light when fellow poker pro Mike Matusow revealed that Forrest owed him hundreds of thousands of dollars. It turned out that Forrest had borrowed heavily from his other poker players, and as his tournament results slowed, the debts began piling up. Forrest himself admitted that he had lost millions betting on sports, a vice that had drained his once impressive bankroll. Forrest's financial issues came to a head in 2015 when he filed a lawsuit against poker pro and businessman Andy Beal, claiming Beal owed him $1.8 million from a high-stakes poker game. The case was eventually dismissed, and Forrest's financial woes continued. Today, despite still being an active player, Forrest's story is a sobering reminder that even the most skilled grinders can face ruin if they aren't careful. David Benjamin, high-stakes roller coaster. David Benjamin was a high-stakes poker beast during the poker boom, crushing some of the biggest cash games in the world. Known for his calm demeanor and ability to win massive pots, Benjamin's poker career skyrocketed alongside his fortune. But like many high-stakes players, Benjamin's love for gambling extended beyond poker, and that's where his problems began. Benjamin's downfall started with his addiction to high-stakes gambling, particularly in sports betting. The French poker pro was notorious for placing massive bets on sports, and while he won big sometimes, the losses were even bigger. He also struggled with degenerative back issues that limited his time at the poker table, meaning he couldn't always rely on poker to rebuild his bankroll. In 2008, rumors began circulating that Benjamin was nearly broke after losing millions in both poker and sports betting. He took a step back from the high-stakes scene, trying to grind his way back in smaller games. But the damage had been done. Although he still plays, Benjamin's days of dominating the high-stakes games in the world are behind him. And his story is a cautionary tale of how gambling beyond poker can lead to financial ruin. These stories add to the long list of poker players who, despite incredible skill and talent, found themselves on the wrong end of fortune due to addiction, bad decisions, or just sheer bad luck. They show that in poker, as in life, winning big doesn't always mean you'll keep it.